Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Present Potential. I'm so grateful for everyone who tunes in to listen to discussions, to engage with us, to sharing comments and messages, and to learning as we explore different variety of experiences from amazing people that continue to be gracious in sharing their time with us. I'm your host, Hassan, and this is Present Potential. In Present Potential, what we tend to do is we focus on our strengths, skills, and capabilities at the moment because we all have the power to do everything that we want to now. It's just taking that action. And today I am joined by someone who's special, who's been introduced to me by a dear friend as well. It's Lisa, and I won't share any introduction about her because I'd love to hear it from her point of view. So, just to kick it off, Lisa, would you please tell us a little bit about yourself?
Huh, that's a big question. My name is Lisa, and I grew up in Atlanta, Georgia, and I went to college in upstate New York because I wanted to prove to myself that I could stand on my own 2 feet, 1,000 or so miles from home. So that was sort of the first taste of discovering who I was. And then I came home because it was way too cold in upstate New York. And I was not used to that much snow. And I loved it for about 4 years, and that was enough. So I came back, I sort of started my career, I got married. And I was sort of inspired by my dad who set his own rules for life. There was no, you know, you need to become you need to go to corporate America, you need to follow these societal rules and things like that. And I was like, that's kind of BS. I don't believe in it. People should follow their joy and their passion and what brings them happiness. And so I never took that route of corporate America because I knew pretty quickly that it was not for me. Um, so I sort of forged my own way, and it took me a long time to get where I am now, but I look back on it and I think it was probably the best thing I could have done for sure.
Amazing. So, born and raised in Georgia, in Atlanta, and then you moved to upstate New York and decided not to go into corporate America and just go out and do things your way. Amazing. I'm sure that this is going to be an exciting discussion.
I will
So,
I will warn you, I'm a bit of a rebel, so
great. You're in the best place. So maybe just to start out with, you mentioned about how you loved how your father was going against the tide or doing things on his own way. Maybe share a little bit about that. Like, what was it like when you were growing up? How did it feel when you were a child and wanting to venture out in the world? What was it like for you?
it was it was interesting. He was a professor, he was a PhD in philosophy, and he taught at different schools depending on, what he wanted to teach. He got to choose what he wanted to teach, which was really cool. And I think it was the first time I saw him doing it the way he wanted. People weren't dictating how it was supposed to be done. So he would choose a class based on what he was interested in the moment, and then he would go teach it at this particular school. And he was such an inspiration to his students, which I loved. He always engaged them and inspired them. And I would go to class with him, or I would go to study sessions with him and things like that. And I would just see how inspired his students were. And he just exuded joy when he was doing this. And I was like, I want to be in that. I just want to live my life this way. Um, because I just didn't believe in playing these sort of preconceived games that corporations had for people. I was like, this is just not me. And I'm not good at faking it. I'm just not. And I could see where people were faking it to get ahead and work. And he wasn't doing that. He was completely authentic, doing what he loved all the time. And I was like, okay, this is what I want for my life. I don't want to play these games. I'm not good at it. I could definitely never be an actor or an actress because I'm just too like, all right, this is what you get. I can't fake it. I'm not very good at that. So I had to figure out how I was going to, what my life was going to look like based on that.
Oh, wow, that's amazing. So, as a professor, and you attended some of his classes, and what you've shared is that he just decides what to teach and then he just goes and does it. I
Yeah.
mean, just thinking about what people do these days, and including me, we tend to overthink or plan and not take any steps or action to actually do the things that we love or do. I'm curious to hear about like what was one of the lectures or the classes or the teachings that he did that really stood out for you?
He taught a lot of ethics and he taught a lot of critical thinking, which
Mm.
to me was mind blowing because I think that's so sorely lacking in this world. People don't use critical thinking skills. He even wrote a book about critical thinking. And
Oh,
so
wow.
that was sort of a no brainer for me. It was kind of like um, using your brain, figuring out how to learn. It became the most important thing. It wasn't what you were learning necessarily, it was figuring out how to learn, and that's kind of what critical thinking is all about, and it was just mind-blowing to me because I was a sort of an average student, and, I excelled in the classes that I really liked, but the other ones, I was like, "Eh, if I don't like it, why am I wasting my time with this?" Right? I wasn't like I have to be a straight A student kind of person. I was like, if I didn't see the point in doing it, I didn't wanna waste my time doing it. Um, but critical thinking sort of opened my mind to learning in general and just knowing how to learn. And it wasn't until much later in life I used to think, well, maybe I'm not that intelligent. I grew up playing sports and things like that. So I never thought of myself as an intelligent person. My mom, super intelligent. My dad, my sister, they were all really, really intelligent. And I just sort of saw myself outside the periphery a little bit. It wasn't exactly the same. And it wasn't until I got older that I realized I have intelligence. It's just slightly different. It's not book learning. It's emotional intelligence. It's being in a conversation with someone and being attentive. And it's maybe a different kind, but there are all types of intelligence. And I think that was a huge learning experience for me.
Oh, wow. I loved how you said that it was about how to learn rather than just learning. Because
Hmm.
that for me indicates that it's a process and really enjoying the process of retaining the information or connecting with people that really matters. It's the journey rather than just the destination that, oh, now we've learned this, so there's nothing else to come there. And you mentioned also your mother and sister, and it sounds like an intelligent household. So I
Very.
I'm pretty sure that you are all more intelligent than the average person, but like when you're looking at them, maybe you're seeing yourself in a different level or um, pedestal as well. How did you find out like what it is that you wanted to do? Because you said you realized you had more of like the emotional intelligence that really drove you. What happened during that time where you started to think about what it is that you wanted to do?
You mean with like career?
Yeah.
Well, there were a couple things. When I was 27, 28, I was diagnosed with Crohn's disease. And I had to sort of learn how to deal with and manage flare ups. And I talked to a lot of people who were managing them with nutrition. And so I went into this deep dive on nutrition and learned a lot about ultra processed foods and how they cause inflammation in the body. And there was something just really fascinating about that. And so I sort of overhauled my entire diet and I managed to go into remission, which is kind of unheard of in Crohn's disease. And that really inspired me to study nutrition more. And then at the time, I think I was freelance writing, but my husband and I ended up co owners of a gym. And I was introduced to this really incredible company called Precision Nutrition. And I was completely hooked because they started this, one of their, what do you call it? One of their new certifications was a level 2. I think I was in their first class where they teach you not only about nutrition, but about behavior change. And I was hooked. I was like, this is like psychology, only better because it was like psychology for coaches. And so it wasn't, we don't like coaches as coaches, we don't necessarily dive deep into psychological issues, but we are always moving forward. So we take those sort of things and we dive into them with clients and we use them to figure out how to move forward with behavior change because change is not easy. But at this point I was completely hooked. So I got my level 2 certification and then I just kept going from there. I got certification after certification and I started practicing with clients and Just sort of seeing their aha moments, like the aha moments that I had experienced was everything, and I wanted to keep going.
Oh, wow. There's a lot there that I can dissect and go
Unpack.
into. Yes, because what I'm feeling is that firstly, I'm really sorry about like what you went through in terms of like your health and realizing that you have the disease. But I'm also really inspired about how you decided to take action and to really look at things that you can do and overhaul your entire nutrition and really understand what it is. And incredibly, like you went into remission, which you said that it doesn't really happen. Would you share with us a little bit during that period? Like, where did you find the strength to actually overcome this type of really huge challenge and obstacle that just changes a life?
It does. I think when you're going through it, you don't think of it like that, right? It's sort of, you just sort of live day to day. How do I get through today? Because I was in a lot of pain and I had to go to work. It was a difficult time. And you just sort of, how do I get through the day? And then the next day becomes the next day. And then you're like, okay, what could I do? This is what coaches worked with their clients on a lot is what is one really tiny thing I have the strength to do today? I have the energy to do today. So I would like literally start really small. I would start when I say overhaul my diet, I don't mean it happened overnight. I mean, it was some time, right? I had to figure out how to cook. I had to figure out what more nutritious foods were and how to use them. So I started watching cooking shows on
Mm,
TV, and that would totally inspire me. And then I would go, okay, I think that my recipe or my meal for tonight needs to kind of look like this because this is a balanced meal with lots of vegetables and fruits and lean proteins and healthy fats. And so I just kind of really slowly learned um, how to overhaul my diet. So it wasn't like it was overnight. And I was taking some seriously heavy duty drugs to get the disease under control. And it took maybe a year. So this was all kind of coinciding. It was happening at the same time. So when I say overhaul, I don't want anybody to think that it's like, snap, I just
yeah.
figured this all out and I'm done. No, it took time. It's like any kind of change. It takes time. But I think it does start with just that sort of, I'm going to get out of bed today and I'm going to figure out what one small thing I have the energy to do that could help me feel better. It was that simple.
Wow, I love that because usually we tend to see the big obstacle or like there's a mountain that we have to climb and we feel discouraged or not willing to get out of bed to overcome anything. While what you're sharing is you just took a first step just every day, one day at a time. And it might sound easy, but like I find that really courageous and so much strength there that you've shared.
Thank
And
you.
and so then you've managed to overhaul your nutrition, which took more than a day. It sounds like a year or more. So that there was a lot of work that went into it there. And then you worked in a gym or you owned a gym, you said, with your husband?
We co-owned a gym for about 4.5 years. We closed it down, I think, right before the pandemic hit.
Oh wow.
Yeah, so what I loved about that was it was a powerlifting studio. It was a personal training powerlifting studio. So people didn't just come in and work out. We trained them. And
Yeah.
what I loved was when the women would come in because women were sort of told, don't lift weights, you're going to get bulky, whatever. They would come in, they would be a little intimidated. And then about a week in, instead of being intimidated, they were like, I want to lift more weight. And so there was this insanely powerful thing about watching these women get stronger. They stood up straighter. They like commanded attention and they were proud of it. It wasn't anymore about I don't want to get too bulky. It was I want to feel strong and empowered. And that was when I was also hooked. I was like, how can I take this and help them feel empowered outside of the gym as well? I think
Oh,
that's really was sort of hooked me on in terms of coaching.
so it's the connection between the mind and body. So you've actually seen how
Absolutely.
the body can become so strong and the women empower themselves in the gym. And then you decided to take it a step further to say, how can we empower women outside of the gym? Because once they're there and they're lifting weights and they're doing more and they're pushing themselves and they're conquering and overcoming different challenges and their own capabilities as well. And then going into the mind. And I think that's where you shared about the certification that you did that was like as more psychological that you went into and understood the mind?
Yeah, for sure. And what you said actually struck me was, I think I've heard you talk about this before, that we all have it inside of us already.
Mm,
It's just sometimes you need somebody to help you pull it out. So, like you said a
yeah.
minute ago, like these women were empowering themselves. I was just there to witness it and maybe help them bring it out, but they were doing it themselves. And I think that's the most empowering thing of all, is when you realize you have this within you already. Maybe you need some help to pull it out. I don't know if that's coaching, if it's therapy, if it's a good, session with your best friend, whatever it takes. But that's the biggest takeaway for people is you already have these things that you need to succeed, um, within you. And it's it's figuring out how to pull them out. That's exciting and exhausting, but really fun.
Yeah. And then, so 4 years and a half, running the gym, watching the women and also the people going there to train. How come you decided to leave it? Like, why didn't you have like a, I don't know, some sort of connection to the gym afterwards, or um,
I don't know. I think it just sort of ran its course.
mm,
Honestly, it was fortuitous or foreshadowing that the pandemic was about to hit. Um, but it just sort of ran its course. People weren't coming as frequently or yeah, I don't really know.
well, I mean,
I don't know.
before the pandemic must have been the best time because
Yeah,
gyms, like
probably.
every other types
Yeah,
of
that was
businesses, really took a hit.
yeah, that would have been a problem. We probably would have ended up having to shut down anyway.
Yeah.
At that point. But, things take their course. And I think at that point, I really jumped even more into actually coaching outside of the gym. And for some reason, I found that maybe as empowering or even more empowering for women.
Yeah.
Um, I do miss it sometimes because I love the physicality and watching them physically get stronger and
Yeah.
how that sort of changes their mindset. Because it is interesting, it changes their mindset outside of the gym too.
Yeah.
Maybe it's that's when they start to realize they had it in them all along,
Mm.
but I think that that kind of strength ends up showing up outside of the gym as well, which is really exciting.
Absolutely. Like it's things that I've also noticed within me as well. Like if I'm feeling, and it's funny because we touched on emotional intelligence, and it's such a vast topic or even type of philosophy that people can understand. And w- I'm actually studying it. I'm reading Daniel Goleman's book and rereading it and watching a lot of his lectures and getting to understand emotions and also how they are. And one of the things that he shares is that being sad or anxious is completely different because sadness is a low arousal state. So, in order to come out of that low arousal state, is to do some activity like aerobics or a physical um, activity that will change that type of state. And it really hit me. I was like, that's so true because when I feel sad, I just want to stay in and stay in bed, do nothing. But in order to be able to overcome that, we have to do the exact opposite. And if it's the mind that's stopping us, then we could use our body to actually go out and transform the states that we're in. And it sounds like there was that connection that you were also witnessing live.
Yeah, that's brilliant. That's really interesting. It makes a lot of sense, right? Because you start to your dopamine, your serotonin, all your feel good chemicals kick in once you start moving. But it's really difficult to talk yourself into
Yeah.
going and being physical unless you remember, if you can remind yourself how good you're going to feel
Mm.
when those chemicals kick in, then it makes it a little easier, I think. But I think that definitely takes practice, and there is a huge correlation between body movement and how the brain reacts and the emotional side of there's I mean the brain body connection is huge. I think people don't realize that.
Yeah, absolutely. And then, so this was up until COVID time, and you're probably like an expert in nutrition by then. I mean, the gym, knowing what to eat and how to take care of your body. Um, where does that fit in afterwards, like within your coaching and also career path or self afterwards? Where does it come in?
What's so interesting about that is I know a lot about nutrition. I would definitely not say expert, but what is more fascinating about it is I am not the expert on your life or anybody else's life. They are the expert. So I can tell you what a nutritious, what a healthy diet looks like, what a healthy meal looks like, and things like that. But I can't make it fit into your life. That's up to you or that's up to the client. And so it looks completely different for everybody, right? Like, um, if you eat McDonald's 3 times a day, 7 days a week, and you go from eating McDonald's 3 times a day, 7 times a week to eating McDonald's once a week, that is a major improvement.
Yeah.
So, it's so individual, and so I when I first, uh, got my first nutrition certification, I was like, "Oh, I'm gonna tell everybody about what they should eat, and this is great. This is they're gonna love this." And then I would see the reactions on people's faces, and they were like, I'm not gonna do that. Doesn't fit my lifestyle. Are you kidding me? So I was like, what's happening here? And then I got my level 2 certification and my board certification. And it was like, oh, I see what's happening here. I'm not helping it fit into their lives at all. So when I work with clients, it's way more about what is it that you want to accomplish and how does nutrition fit into that? And how can we just dial up the nutrition to be a little better, right? It doesn't need to be perfect. So that's, I stopped preaching about here's what you should eat because that word became the demon to me. The should word, I don't use it anymore. I don't use it on myself. I don't use it with other people. It's such a terrible word when you say you
Yeah,
should do this. It's almost like you're attacking somebody and you're saying you're not doing this right. It's like
exactly.
no, it's let's figure out how it works for you, right?
Oh wow, absolutely. And I love the also the communication where you're saying that word is eliminated from my dictionary because it has like different connotations to it. And then so you have this, I would say maybe like a tool that you could bring into the service that you're providing to others with how to understand our bodies and nutrition, and also running a business in terms of like the gym as well, and then bringing everything together. What was something that was challenging during COVID time, like when you sold the gym and then you started focusing on your coaching? What was one of the most challenging parts? Like, what did you see that really maybe was an obstacle that you wanted to overcome, or something that kept on coming up repeatedly?
There was a lot of fear, I think, for everyone. This was unprecedented. None of us had ever lived through anything like this before. I mean, to be honest with you, when it started, my husband and I are both I'm an introverted extrovert. Or is it? Yeah, I think that's what it is. Where I get my energy more when I'm on my own or in a very small group of people. And so when it was really quiet out because of COVID, it was so relaxing to me because things are usually so loud and it was very quiet and I could just breathe and relax for a minute. But then there was also this severe fear because my husband is high risk, my mother is high risk. Um, and so it was like, "Oh my god, are we ever gonna come out of this? What are we gonna how are we gonna live? How is this gonna look? Is this ever gonna end?" We were scared to see people, for fear of getting sick. And so there was a lot of fear wrapped up in it too. It was a really interesting time because I didn't have a problem staying home for a while, and sort of processing what was happening because I am a slow processor. Sometimes it takes me a little longer to sort of, excuse me, look around and absorb what's happening and process it emotionally. And so that was a really hard time in that way. But it was also
Yeah,
really, it was a very enlightening time. Excuse me. Sorry.
no
We
problem.
were, trying to figure out what life was going to look like post COVID.
Yeah, it was completely new for everyone. And I what you shared is also, I can resonate with that because during COVID, it was my wife, myself, my wife, and our first daughter, and she was 6 months or almost 1 year. So she wasn't really walking yet. And when we were home, working from home and have nothing else to do, we actually witnessed her growing up and crawling
Mm,
and standing and
mm,
then walking. So that experience for us was great. But then when I spoke to some friends or ex-colleagues that were in the company that I was in, most of the people that had no one at home, or like they didn't have a partner or anyone to share what they're going through, they actually felt so lonely.
mm,
And it's
mm.
that fear as well that you mentioned, like the unknown, what's going to happen, especially having like high risk people that you love are also there and not knowing what's going to take place. And then things started going back to normal. And how was it after like going back and coming out and focusing, I guess, completely on your coaching by then?
Yeah, well, at this point, I wrote a book during COVID.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
and then I found out that my level 2 program, they were redoing the whole program so that you could take the program again and then be able to sit for the national, what is it? The National Board for Health and Wellness Coaches is a national board certification. And this was way out of my comfort zone. But at this point, I think I was thinking, God, we just survived a pandemic. How hard life, how hard could this be? I mean, not how hard could this be? Because it was really hard. But I found so much joy in every moment. And I know you talk a lot about this, the whole process of fulfilling your potential. I
Yeah.
had so much joy and excitement from what I was learning and implementing with people that I never really thought of it as hard. It was definitely hard. I
Yeah.
never thought of it that way. But I was using sort of, I think, the pandemic to put things into perspective. It was like, wow, if we can survive something like that, um, you can try anything, right? I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, this is one of the things I work on with clients, which is fear of failure is an illusion because failure is really just feedback. And what it means is if we're not out there failing, we're not trying.
So true.
And you have to fail in order to learn. But that's how you need to look at failure is it's a learning opportunity. You didn't do anything wrong. You just learned what worked and what didn't work. And that gives you the freedom to just go try things without worrying about whether they work or don't work.
So true. It becomes not the opposite of success, but failure can become a stepping stone to success
Yeah.
because it's just like building one step at a time, and it's that feedback that you're getting. But before that, you said you published a book during
I
COVID
did.
time. So let's talk about that a little bit. Tell us about your book.
It's called The Meal Deal. Blaze your own trail to a healthier eating lifestyle. So I know I said earlier I don't like to preach what to eat. But it's sort of a trial and error. It teaches you how to do your own trial and error and figure out how to set up your kitchen environment and your home surroundings in order to eat more nutritious foods more often, right? Because I find that if you aren't set up at home, it's too easy to just say, okay, it's 6 o'clock at night. I don't know what I'm going to eat. And then you reach for fast, convenient foods, which are generally not the most nutritious things to eat. So if you can set up your kitchen environment, and that's what the book does, is helps you set up your kitchen environment based on your own lifestyle. But I was doing this during the pandemic because I was sitting at home and I'm like, I think, wow, I think I could actually maybe help people do kitchen makeovers and figure out how they want to cook at home because they're stuck at home. So that's sort of the impetus for I started writing it, I think, right before the pandemic. But then I really finished it. I finished it then too.
Wow, congrats. I'm
Thank
definitely
you.
going to check out this book because
Thank
when you were
you.
saying at 6 p.m. you feel like I don't know what to, yeah, I'm that guy.
Are you that guy? And how does that make you feel?
The ease of ordering, great. But it's such a big like food and nutrition, especially with our two daughters, like they're 5.5 and 3.5. So food is such a big discussion and arguments and eat this and don't eat that and let's try to balance it out. So that is such an important topic that we don't really think about enough, I think.
It depends on whether you wanna think about it, right? Like, some people, sometimes, especially with 2 kids that age, you are just trying to get through the day,
Yeah,
right? The
true.
last thing you wanna worry about is, "Oh my gosh, I have to plan my meals, that's too much for me to think about." But yeah, it's something that if it's something you decide to experiment with, that was kind of why I wrote the book. It's one big experiment. It is really what it is. It's like I sort of spell out what worked for me, and then I give you ideas about what may work for you.
That's amazing. And it sounds like it's a big project. And I'm guessing the way that you approached it was similar to how you did the overhaul.
Very much so. That's exactly where it came from. It was more like, okay, this can feel really overwhelming and really daunting. So we are going to break it down into tiny, tiny steps. And that's exactly how the book is laid out. Like we start really small. My gosh, I think I've written it so long ago. I forgot what the first chapter was. It's basically an intro to healthier eating habits. And then we go into like a kitchen makeover, but we do it so small. And I give you a sort of sheet at the end of each chapter that sort of spells out, if you want to start small, this is, go find 10 recipes. Spend 3 days this week finding 10 recipes. It's that simple. You don't even have to make the recipes,
Just
right?
fine.
So we start building from there. It's pretty much exactly how I did it. We start building really slowly. And then before you know it, you're cooking, 5 to 6 meals at home every week.
Yeah. Oh, wow. That's amazing. So now, after COVID, the book, the projects that you've done, where do you see the next 5 years? Like, what is the aspiration? What's the vision?
So to be honest with you, I am really bad at setting goals. And that sounds sacrilegious coming from a coach. Um, I prefer to be in the moment, and I know that's a big thing for you because I feel like sometimes setting goals, they just feel so out of reach. However, I do think setting some maybe an agenda or, for some people goals are fantastic because it really drives them. For me, it's like I just want to enjoy the moment and what does that look like for me? So, doing podcasts I love because I feel so connected and engaged with the other person. So I would definitely love to do more of these. And coaching one-on-one and in small groups, there's so much joy and satisfaction that comes from that. So I definitely want to keep doing that. I honestly don't really ever write my own script. I sort of wing it and I'm like, well, this is bringing me joy and happiness. And I feel like I'm empowering other women, which is my biggest goal of all. So it will be along that path, but there's rarely for me any clear cut, I need to be at this place in 5 years, you know?
I love that. I love it because it sounds like what your father used to do in teaching as well. He just like decides what he's going to teach and he just does it. I mean, it's what you're doing.
You are so good at bringing it back around. I love it. That's impressive. That is a skill.
And it's so true because like it's these small steps that we take and we see what we like and what we don't like. And I really loved what you shared earlier that you said, I know what I want to do and what I like to do. So I'll just focus on that instead of doing the things that I don't enjoy. And I'm the person probably in the other scale because I thought I want to be the best in everything. But then
Mm.
I tend not to be good in anything. And it's only when I started realizing that it's just do one thing at a time, just one thing, don't do anything else, that we focus our energy and time and efforts into completing the thing to the best of our abilities.
Do you find that brings you more peace because you're not overly focused on the outcome?
Yeah, it does. And it's part of like the philosophy as well of living every moment that we are now. So enjoying every process. So as coaches, we really love seeing our clients do well and the transformations and them growing. But I've realized that it's everything. So it's even the preparation before we get on a call, like just sitting down and
Mm.
just preparing to see someone on the other side of the screen or if it's face to face. That process, like before, I used to be very anxious because I don't know what's going to happen. But now I'm so grateful for that because I get to be in that environment, in their presence, and discussing things that are completely creative. And that's the beauty
Mhm.
of it. Like, I love that aspect of bringing things to the now, to the moment.
Yeah, it really and that's I think that's one of the best ways to spark creativity, right? It's
Yeah,
like
it is.
if you're really in the moment, you're going to learn something from the other
Exactly.
person and it's going to spark some creativity. And whatever you choose to do with that is your thing, but it should if you're really involved, it will spark creativity.
Well, so with that creativity and this motivation, who was someone that inspired you? Like going back and thinking that's, I don't know, it could be someone close to you or anyone that really you watched speak or deliver. And it could be a combination of people living or non-living, and it could be anyone. Like, who was one or two people that really inspired you?
There are so many. I mean, I would start with the people I know the best. Like my husband is, he's one of the most tenacious people. He's got more grit and resilience than anyone I know, especially considering his health challenges that he's grown up with. My dad, for obvious reasons. My mom, she's so kind and compassionate. My sister, I mean, she's one of the most kind people, one of the most compassionate people, and she works hard. She's just goes after what she wants. She has like I know it's probably hidden in there, but she has like no fear, and I just love that so much about her. She's so inspiring. And like I said, my mom is the same way, so inspiring. Um, Other people, I think anyone who uh sort of have this big thing about playing small. There's a woman that I follow called her name is Tara Moore, and she's phenomenal. She talks about women playing small. And this was a really big thing for me that I didn't realize had been holding me back for most of my life until I was, wow, I mean, probably 45 years old, that I realized that I had been playing small. And
Mm.
so when I started reading her book called Playing Big, I was like, "Oh my god, I've been playing small my whole life. What am I doing? I don't want to do this anymore." So she was a huge inspiration for me, um, in how I wanted to empower other women to play bigger if that's what they want to do.
Mm.
Not everybody wants to play bigger, but I think most people want to play bigger, and that can look so different for so many different people. But I think she was such huge inspiration for me in helping other women play bigger.
That the story connects. Like, it just,
Yeah.
it's amazing how you're providing this a service to empower other women in the same way that you're inspired by someone. Um,
Absolutely.
Usually we have a tradition on the podcast. We usually end it with asking a question about what is your motto, or like your words of wisdom, or something that you kept repeating to yourself in the most challenging times. What's something that you could share with us that would help us as well to continue this motivation and drive?
Well, the biggest thing for me, because my biggest core value, one of them is kindness. So the Dalai Lama said, "Be kind whenever possible. It is always possible."
Oh, I love that.
Yeah,
Straight to the point.
it's yeah, I mean, it's possible, I think, because kindness can help other people feel seen and heard and valued, and that in turn can open the door to connection, which is really everything. I think we're so sorely lacking connection, and really kindness is how you get there.
It's so true. I love that. Lisa,
Thank you.
thank you so much for joining us. It's been
Thank
a
you for
pleasure
having me. It's such an honor.
listening to your story. Like, I feel so motivated and hearing how many things you've done by just starting small and seeing where things go, being creative in that way as well.
Thank you, and I love how you bring it all together because I've had this aha moment with you where I never sort of looked back at the story and tied anything together, but the starting small and building and all of that, brilliant.
Thank you so much. Thank you everyone for joining. And as always, today is the most important day of your life. Have a good day, and until next time.